This is very important. And because it's so important, have you ever listened to somebody where everything mattered? And have you ever listened to somebody where it seemed like nothing mattered? Monotone, yeah, we could do this or we could do that and blah, 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 blah. You know what's even weirder, and I've seen this too? Oh, by the way, I've done it. So here's what I'm gonna suggest you don't. And I'm calling it random acts of emphasis. What do I mean? Putting the emphasis on the wrong word. So today I wanna focus on your problems. It sounds a little off-putting, right? If I maybe thought about focusing on your problems, a little bit different. Doesn't necessarily make it better, but it's simply a matter of so often, and by the way, this is why you want to practice, practice, practice. There's an old adage from an old sports icon. Well, I mean, he's not old. He's a lot younger than me, but he played for the 76ers years and years and years ago. Allen Iverson, a master, one of the coolest, funnest, most exciting players of all time. But he got grilled one time when he was off-putting practice. Practice? I'll show you the clip and maybe you'll remember. But here's the thing. In this world, in our circumstance, in order for me to try to be able to help you to get where you need to be, we're gonna practice. We are gonna practice. Sorry, AI, we are going to practice. So here's why I'm saying that. Often when you don't practice and you're delivering a speech, a presentation, even an important conversation, you're rattling off details, facts, stats, and you're reading them. You're literally reading them because whether it was a surprise that somebody added information to your group meeting, or you've got so much there that you don't remember, you're reading it all and you realize, well, I don't want to sound monotone. And you just start emphasizing things, random things. In the media sales, digital sales realm, when I talk about the fact is, an hour late news was #1 in the time period for the last 5 years. You're like, okay, I don't know what that means. The fact of the matter is, if you were in my field, you heard people do that, as if you were then supposed to act excited or act as if this matters. It's the worst kind of influencing because you don't even know what you're influencing. So the practice is telling the whole story. Here's a tip. Here's your takeaway, right? You emphasize a thought, not a word. And I've been taught that by the best voiceover coaches, where people will say to me, when I'm delivering a voiceover read, people will literally say, I remember I was working with a group, and they said, it sounds like you got a handle on things about halfway through the script. Well, that's great. But the first half of the script sounded like somebody who was reading, and that's not great. And when you're delivering a presentation, you want to sound like you are the curator, this is the idea, you're the problem solver, you've heard people, and your voice will give you away when you don't. So #1, do not read out loud. Nobody needs to be read out loud unless you're some little kid that has a difficult time sleeping. Well then fine, read them a story out loud. But for anyone who's above 3 years old, talk to them, tell them the story. Secondly, you're emphasizing a thought. Typically, the emphasis is on something that matters to them, not what matters to you. That's what you're going to put emphasis on. If you're like me and you're in the voiceover field, emphasize the client's name, emphasize the salient points, find or mine for gold, as my friend and coach Kelly McGee has said. Find those points and emphasize those. But lastly, for you, when you're delivering, emphasize a thought. The easiest one, which ones? The ones that matter to your audience. Those are the ones you're going to emphasize. Typically, that's what they're going to want to hear. You want to emphasize one more thing in addition to those? Emphasize what others have said to you before, the ones that you're meeting when you're going through the materials. And we talked about almost like that dog whistle effect. Emphasize that. Do you remember when you talked about increasing recruitment? Oh, right, I remember saying that. Emphasize that. So you're using your voice to, in essence, punch the right things. So, takeaways: emphasize thoughts, know the whole story, do not punch everything. Everything does not have equal value, but be able to deliver the emotion and the emphasis by literally keying and leaning into certain phrases. And when you're unsure, go to the ones that matter to the audience, the receiver. They'll know, and more importantly, they're going to react.
We're talking about practice, man. We're talking about practice.